Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today, we have one more set of great stories for you to enjoy. But before we start, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Tell me to learn some respect after forgetting my pay? Fine, I'll honor everything you ask. I worked minimum wage as a retail everything. I was half manager, half cashier floor worker, half inventory. What I'm trying to say is I did too many things, but this was a small business, mom and pop style shop. There were only 3 of us at a time running the whole operation, and these were family friends. I felt I had a responsibility to this family. Minimum wage wasn't enough for a stranger, but it was enough for me. For a while. After 3 years, I'd tripled their business profits. I know this because one of my many tasks involved balancing the books. I knew exactly what our sales numbers were. I knew our profit margins. I knew what our inventory cost. I knew our landlord on a first-name basis, and I knew what bills we paid. I was good at my job. This store was like my family, and I made them proud. My wage had not increased in those 3 years, but looking at the numbers, I thought now was a good time to bring it up. So I did. It was November, entering December. I asked for $1 more, and my boss agreed. That December, my boss forgot to pay me. I had nothing to cover my Christmas holiday. The next month, he didn't mention it at all when I returned to work after the holiday. I had to remind him that he was nearly 7 weeks overdue. When he finally paid me, he didn't include the raise that we'd agreed upon, so I brought it up again to ask for clarification. He sat me down in the back room and told me he couldn't believe how demanding I was. That in all his years, he'd never seen someone act so rude and disrespectful to their elders. If we were strangers, I'd have left on the spot, but we were family. I was in tears. But I was also angry. Very angry. He wanted to go on his own holiday. He wanted to go for 3 weeks. But to teach me a lesson in respect, he also wanted to slash my hours. What's a store owner to do? He hired a new employee to cover the hours he was cutting from my schedule. He even made me train the new girl for him to teach me respect. After this training period, my shifts went from 4 days a week to 1 day a week. This way he could give me a decent raise on paper, but pay me a quarter of what he did before. And his new employee accepted the lowest minimum wage. I didn't object. As a last-ditch effort to save the business, I offered to spread my shift out and come in for 1 hour at the end of each day to check the new employee's numbers, but he refused. He wanted me to feel bad. I felt terrible. For my boss. As hard as I tried, the new employee had never understood numbers. I tried and failed to teach her how to calculate her sales numbers at the end of each shift. This poor girl was straight out of high school and had too many other subjects to think about. If we'd had more time for training, she probably would have learned, but my boss cut my hours too short for me to go into depth about it. And who was I to argue with his schedule? That's why when he went on holiday and I couldn't be around to check this girl's work during the rest of the week, the business lost money. On the days I wasn't scheduled to work, thousands of dollars in sales went unaccounted for. Hundreds of dollars of cash were miscounted. Numbers were typed incorrectly into our computer system, rendering our inventory counts useless. After 3 weeks, he returned to an absolute mathematical nightmare. The sales numbers from my 3 days of work were perfectly accounted for, and 3 times higher than what our system reported we sold the rest of the week, although who knows what the real numbers were. I think this made him angry. He really wanted to teach me a lesson in humility. In my last full shift, a customer tried to return something large, and I told them our store policy to the letter, only my boss had the power to return that item. To make sure it would be returned properly, I did write a note on the receipt that they had tried to return it to me, but I was following store policy and leaving it for my boss to handle when he returned from his holiday. Apparently, according to the angry reviews left on our social media, he refused to accept the return and told the customer she was a stupid idiot for believing me. In my next scheduled shift, I asked him point blank if the review was true, and he laughed about it. He told me he was just showing us all who's boss. He admitted to the whole thing. He also mentioned he was giving me more hours as a reward for all of my hard work. He wanted me to come in every day from now on to review all the numbers. I came clean. He'd given me a lot of time off in the past few weeks, and during that time I'd found a new job. I made it clear also that I never had once disobeyed his instructions or broken store policy. Every action I'd taken had left a paper trail. However, he'd broken every single agreement he'd made with me. My payday dates, my wages, my scheduled hours, things that could be proven by my expert paper trail to our Ministry of Labor. And his behavior and comments around customers were posted on every social media review, which he admitted to, so I knew exactly what he thought of me. I was only there to hand over the keys to the store. He cried. He couldn't look me in the eyes. Part of me sad, because for a long time we were family. Since my departure, reviews of my old family-run shop have absolutely tanked. Meanwhile, my new job is incredibly wholesome. My hours are solid, my benefits are excellent, and my rates are triple what I made before. And I wouldn't be here if I hadn't followed instructions to the letter. I've learned so much about respect. And our next story. Just pay the $15 fine. So I work at a school library. We rent out chargers for phones and laptops upon request for a few hours, but they have relatively steep fines for being returned late. Usually I waive the fines, especially if it's returned less than an hour after it was due. In comes one guy, let's call him H, who is a serial laptop charger renter, almost every day. Well, a few days ago, he accidentally brought the charger home with him. Now, our fines are $1.50 an hour, which was at about $20 total when he called in the next day. He asked me if he would be fined. I knew him, so I was willing to waive his fine, but I couldn't tell him over the phone because he might come back at a time when I'm not working and some other librarians are less lax about fines. So I tell him, currently your fine is at $25, but if you bring it in, then we can discuss it further. I'm sure we can figure something out. He hangs up, and I assume he'd be coming in. 2 days later, H comes waltzing up to my desk and sets a laptop charger down in front of me. The very same one he took home 3 days prior. I scanned it in and told him, "You have an $85 fine on your account." "What? It was $25 when I called." "That was 2 days ago. The fine is by the hour." "You didn't tell me that." The fine info is taped to the inside of the charger. Tell you what, I'll go ahead and waive everything but that first $25, all right? You just pay the fine you thought you'd pay. "But the guy on the phone told me he would waive it." I didn't tell him that. "I'm waiving $60, so you only have to pay $25. "I want to talk to your boss." Now, at this point, I should mention that we aren't strictly allowed to waive fines. It's just that the library can't tell the difference between a fine waived by a manager or just an employee. I was being generous. "If I bring my manager in here, you're going to have to pay the whole fine." "I want to talk to him." So I bring in my manager. After hearing the situation, my manager bluntly says, "It's an $85 fine. Will that be cash or card?" He stammered and walked out of the library. It's okay, though. He just can't check out books or graduate until the fine's paid. C'est la vie. And our next story. Don't call us unless it breaks. Bit of backstory. I work as a machine operator in a factory-type setting. I'm responsible for 2 lines of moving product with the fairly simple job of keeping the machines running and basic quality control. I've held my current position for 3 years, and frankly, most weeks I spend more time with these machines than my wife. I know when something isn't right. Our engineering department doesn't always agree. 2 days ago, one of my 2 machines begins to make a clanking sound. I give it a quick once-over. It seems like 2 metal parts are slapping together, probably just a loose bolt. I grab a radio and call for an engineer. Oh, great. It's one of the newer ones fresh out of school. He listens to it run for a few minutes. It's running fine. Why'd you call me out here?" "Don't you hear that noise?" "It's fine. Always sounds like that." He makes a note in his log and leaves. The machine is still operational and my shift ends in 20 minutes, so I let it go. Next day, I come in for my shift and it's still making the same noise. I ask the previous shift operator about it. They repeat a similar story with the same engineer. 3 hours into my shift, the noise has gone from occasional to near constant. I call for an engineer to come check it out again. Our newest engineer comes down. "What's wrong this time?" "You seriously don't hear that? Can you just give it a quick check?" "You guys need to stop calling us down here for this. Look at it, it's running fine." He makes another note in his log and walks off. 4 hours later, the clanging has gotten louder and the machine is beginning to jostle with each impact. Concerned, I again call for an engineer. This time, he doesn't even bother inspecting the machine. "Damn it, Kingler, I told you it's fine. Don't call us back down here unless it breaks." Cue compliance. I run it as is for the rest of my shift. The noise and movement of the machine is growing worse the entire time. I check it every other hour. Hasn't broken yet. I inform the relief shift of what's going on and go home. So I come in today and the noise is nearly deafening, and the entire product line is shaking with the strength of the impacts. The previous shift informs me that the engineering department still hasn't looked at it. I stop the machine and give it a quick look. Still not broken. I run it as is. 10 hours into my shift, and we are suddenly bombarded by a symphony of metallic noises and screeches. Half of the machine is now on the floor, while the other half gyrates wildly as it attempts to continue. I press the emergency stop button and make the call. He begins to complain before he even makes it to my lines. "Listen, damn it, I told you. What the hell did you do to this machine, Kingler?" It broke. For the last 2 hours of my shift, I enjoyed the luxury of only having to focus on one of my product lines and the blissful noises of our good friend being royally chewed by his boss as an entire engineer crew is now attempting to salvage the machine. When I clocked out, it was still lying in ruins. Update. As expected, there was no significant fallout. I came in this morning and the machine was operational again. According to the operator I relieved, it was down for a total of 6 hours. No one lost their job. I don't actually know how expensive the replacement parts were, but considering the speed they had it back up, they likely had some on hand. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.